Oops, I put finish. Okay, so the techniques that we're doing, we're going to go ahead and write these in. Dry brush, wet on dry, wet on wet, flat wash, graded wash, variegated wash, negative painting, palette knife, and there's a few ways to spell palette. I'm spelling it P-A-L-A-T-T-E. There's a fading out, glazing, bleeding or bloom, salt, lemon juice, rubbing alcohol, crayon resist, another thing you could use instead of crayon resist would be like rubber cement, and then nature. Okay. Okay, so we're going to get started with the different techniques. So dry brush. So I have my mixing table. Of course, it has dry watercolor, which is perfectly good when you constitute it with water. And then I have my tray of watercolors. I have my cup of water. I have my paper towel. I'm using a round 8 brush, watercolor brush. So for dry brush, the basic idea is that you want to get your paint onto your tray, okay? And then I need a little bit more pigment. And then what you want to do is you want to just press your brush onto a paper towel and let the water come out. You're not necessarily just wiping pigment off. You're letting the water sort of draw into the paper towel, okay? So that means my brush is still damp, right? But it's not wet, okay? And then your dry brush means that you don't have a ton of water. So you get this texture as you bring your brush across the page. Okay? Because see how it skips and then you have the white of the paper coming through? That's dry brush. Okay? And at any time you're not, like, if this doesn't work the first time you do it, you can blot. Just hold your paper towel to your watercolor paper and just blot and try again, maybe with a darker color or something, okay? For wet on dry, it's exactly what it sounds like. So your paper's dry, your brush is going to be wet. I'm going to pick this color up. And you're doing your wet on dry evenly, consistently, okay? It's exactly what you'd expect, wet on dry, okay? Now for wet on wet, you want to start with a clean brush and you want to just wet your paper, right? Like there's a lot of water on there. So you're just dragging clear water onto your paper. And then you want a decent amount of pigment on there. So I'm going to do, I'll do blue. Okay. So now I'm dropping, this is called dropping in. So these are all basically vocabulary words that you're going to hear throughout this unit, okay? So wet on wet, you're dropping in color. And so, and it does kind of its own thing because the water is going to move it around with you or for you, okay? I'm going to actually leave it just with that one so that you can see how interesting it ends up being on its own, okay? Okay, for flat wash, ideally you would use a square tip brush. I don't have any of those right now, so I'm going to show you the flat wash. You're basically going to be using the same amount of paint. Every time you make a stroke, you're going to grab more paint, make another stroke, grab more paint. Okay, so I'm going to use this yellow. And you don't want it to be skippy. And notice I'm leaving a room in between each of the techniques so that we don't get that bleeding, which is one of the techniques. Okay, so the graded wash, so we're down here. I'm gonna do, what color? I think we'll do red. Okay, so graded wash. I'm gonna make sure I have a good amount of paint on my brush. Now, since you want a gradation, right? Grade means value change. So I'm gonna take my brush with a lot of pigment, bring it across. I need more pigment. Okay, now I'm going to wipe my brush off a little bit, dip it in water, thin it out. And each time I put my brush down, I'm adding more water. So you have a gradation of your color. So it's strongest when you begin, and it gets lighter and lighter and lighter every time you create another stroke. That's a graded wash or gradation wash.
How do you make your finger wet? You put water on it.
You can look at variegated wash, the next one, as if you're using different colors. There's more variety, right? Variegated, there's some variety in there. So I'm going to start with, I'll start with some black. Again, put your pigment into your mixing tray first. Okay. So there's one tone, and then we'll do some blue, blue-green, and maybe some orange. And your yellow maybe. Okay, so there's more variety in the degrees of strokes. Okay, negative painting, that's one of those ones that, you know, sometimes with watercolor you have to go really quickly, and other times you have to be super duper patient. Okay, so for the first layer, I'm going to go ahead and layer on just a couple of tones and then I'm going to come back to it after it dries. So that's where the patience comes in. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that like that for now. Let it dry. Any color you wish, just make sure it's very light. Okay, for the palette knife one, you're going to use one of these plastic or whatever kind of palette knife you have, or something, even a cut piece of cardboard would do the same thing. You want to have some pigment in a long area on your tray. Okay, and then I'm just going to pick up some, and then what you can do is just kind of play around with this for the first couple times and see what you can get it to do. It's a good thing to use for texture. You can make little marks with it. I think I need more pigment on mine, so I'm going to try that again. This is a palette knife.
Oh, I put it on the wrong side. That was not how I was supposed to do it.
Okay, so for the fading out one, we're going to do one cool color and one warm color. So okay, so for fading out, I'm going to show you, you make little zigzags, sort of, almost like you're making trees or something. So I'll start with this, and I'm going to make some space. So I'll do 3 of the blue, and I'll do 3 of the red. Yeah, they're kind of like little Christmas trees. Just making little zigzags. And then this is one of those things that you have to work rather quickly. Okay, so I'm going to do a little shorter version here. And maybe we'll do taller here. Okay, the fade out happens on the bottom, so I'm going to take my water, clear brush, just water alone, and come up until I touch the bottom of those, and then it starts to fade. Okay? Okay, so for glazing is one of those ones that you want to be patient again. We're still waiting for the negative painting, the first layer to dry there. So you're going to pick 5 different colors, but first you're going to we'll do 3 stripes, okay? So I'll do blue. And you want these pretty similar, your stripes to be similar in width. I'll do a brown one. And I'll do a green. But again, you can pick whatever colors you like. Okay, so 3 vertical stripes. And then leave it alone, okay? We want this to dry so that the next horizontal stripes that go over it of different colors, you can start to see how the colors kind of overlap. That's what we're planning for this one. Okay, bleeding and bloom. I'm going to go ahead and wet the space again, just with clear water. It does look like there's a little green on my brush, but that's okay.
Oh.
Okay. So your bleeding is kind of like what we did with wet on wet, okay? That's the wet on wet. Your bloom can be considered more of, it can be considered a couple things, but you can consider it more of like just a drop, or like if you tap your brush and it kind of starts to expand that way, it's getting all over. See how it kind of blooms? So these are bleeding. They're bleeding together. They're blooming outward. I think I'm going to do another color. We'll do a little green in there. And let that bleed. So see how these are bleeding together over here? Kind of hard to control. Okay, the next one is salt. And salt can be, I honestly struggle with the salt one because I never know exactly how much pigment to put on, how much water. Obviously it can't be dry to be effective, but it also can't be too wet. So I'll go ahead and I'll start out with some pigment on my paper, and then don't let it dry too much. Okay, right away you can grab your salt. I'm just using table salt, and I'm just gonna pinch a little bit on there, and then leave it. Let it dry. Don't touch it. See what it does. Okay, that's another thing that you can do for texture. I think I'm going to come back. I have the 4, and then I have the negative painting and the glazing. So I'm going to make a second video that I'll post later on the rest of that. Okay, have fun with this.